Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Taarika Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Today, we're beginning our new podcast series, Career Choice, The Intelligent Way, a collaboration between Taarika Foundation and Mybraindesign. We're joined by two expert guests, Dr. Sweta Adatia and Dr. Leena Khanzode, who will guide us through the science behind our brains, the different brain types, and whole brain skill building to empower us youth to navigate our future with clarity and confidence. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving. Today, we're continuing with the Career Choice, the Intelligent Way series, where we learn about how we can use neuroscience and AI to map ourselves to the best future. In the last episode, we covered the SORT analysis and how we can get to know ourselves. Today, we're going to explore the success pyramid and the mind brain design test. Let's dive right in. What is the success pyramid and what are the different levels in it?
Thank you so much again, Seerat and Dr. Leena. It's been a pleasure talking to you for the last couple of episodes and to all the listeners and audience. So I joke and I say I'm a brain plumber. I fix broken brains, but that's not a very exciting job. I just had one of the broken brains today. And when I think of job also, the thing that comes into my mind is just over broke. So it is really something what is about the calling, and this is my calling when I'm talking to you guys and talking to everybody, because I think somewhere in the pyramid I wish that early on I was given that chance to explore my brain design. And many years back, I had the opportunity to also learn what am I best capable at, and then what are my options, what are my opportunities. So when we did a deep dive into various career choices, we thought let's prepare a very easy and sort of a modular process by which people can just very quickly look into it and then see where they are into the pyramid. So basically, this is built for anybody. It is not just for the people who are seeking careers, or there are also some adults, in the college, they don't know what their majors could be, or they can be in a PhD setting, they don't know what kind of a subject they can choose, etc. So it's a fairly large audience that this kind of a pyramid caters to. So it starts with self discovery. And last couple of episodes, we have been talking about what is self discovery, essentially knowing how my thinking or wiring is. And the beautiful thing is that this kind of a wiring is hardwired. It's not essentially impossible to change, but then it is quite solidified by the age of 13. So it's a good idea to know that, because subconsciously, without our conscious awareness, we will be having the skills, behavior, communication, all the things that we do matching to that. So it's a great place to be when you are aware. So my spiritual teacher used to say a very nice thing that is coming to my mind: aware, care, and dare. The moment you are aware, then automatically you care about it, and then you dare to do something which is interesting. So the self discovery is sort of the first step in the pyramid. And as you move forwards, yes, in the last episode we did talk about opportunity awareness. I should be aware about what are all the things happening. I think from the first industrial revolution to second to third and the fourth industrial revolution that we are in, we are all bombarded every day with topics such as AI and robotics and nanosciences and genomics and genetics and all. You name it, and things are there, right? I mean, in fact, we were discussing in the last episode also about personal memory curation, bionic limbs, and something which currently we don't do, but very soon there will be specific people doing about it. In Dubai, I live in Dubai, and there is a future museum. So when we go to the future museum, there are very nice stalls, and in one of the stall that you go, they have a jacket which is like a copper jacket, and which can have anti immunity protection, and it has antiviral properties, etc., and all. So I think the way in which we use things, the way in which we will be exposed to things, it's going to be a very different. There's one mirror where you just go and stand, and then it would just very quickly decide what kind of an odor or a fragrance that you will have for your perfume. So just merely by the visual this of it. So AI is sort of, taken over when it comes to all the data sciences, etc. and all. There's also one, this humanoid robot. So a lot of us would be having humanoid robots also in our existence and in our actual workplaces, etc. So tomorrow there'll be two people who will be competing for the job. So there'll be you and then a humanoid robot as well. And
Right.
interestingly, we just completed a very small but very interesting study where there were some interviews which were being taken by the humanoid robot and a human. And I thought, let me answer the questions as well. So and EEG was being recorded, and all the pulse and the autonomic nervous system record was happening, and I was answering those questions to a human and then to a humanoid robot. And to my surprise, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to think about it at this time, let me be a participant. Whatever the questions that the human was asking, I was able to better answer because I was able to connect to the emotional modulation, all the
Hmm.
micro expressions and everything. And humanoid robot, I was like, the same questions I wasn't able to answer that well. So that is what, all these things are very, very interesting, and what will be sort of the opportunities of future and also challenges of future. So that's on the opportunity awareness. The third step is the career consciousness focus. So last episode we talked about that, if whatever I'm interested in, what my academic skills are, what my brain thinking type is, based on that, what should be my choice of that career consciousness, what kind of careers I should be inviting in to consider for myself. And largely from the left side of the brain, the left upper and the left lower, talking about type 1 and 3, we are talking about technical careers, data careers, something which is very operational specific, or what is into hands-on technology based careers. While if we talk about the right upper and the right lower, where we're talking of 2 and 4, we are talking about creative careers, people centric careers, more innovative careers, entrepreneurial enterprise careers. So this is how you divide the brains as well. Now, the interesting thing is, yes, I have my brain design, and now I know, okay, these are the potential careers. So, can I put a nice little blueprint of what can be my future path? The best thing, Seerat and Dr. Leena, what I like about the entire thing is when we put these prediction models, let's say my thinking type is, I was talking about it in the last episode, it's very innovation and process driven, right? It's like a car with a brake and a pedal on. What kind of environment would I be stimulated by? What kind of a job would be something which I would prefer to do? So we put it all into the AI models, and there's something called the life design blueprint which comes out. Now, remember, it's still a blueprint, but then it's a very interesting blueprint as to what kind of, the even the furniture would what would attract me, what kind of an office space would attract me, what kind of a country. In fact, very interesting data exists for also the country maps. Dr. Herman's data has been evaluated for this kind of general country maps. Let's assume, what kind of brain type or a my brain design an entire United States of America would be. Sira, do you want to
Hmm.
guess what brain, if we collectively put all the Americans together? Well, let's assume that it's a I mean, America is quite wide, right? West is very different from East, and Center is very different. But let's assume an average. If we are just cutting out into the average, where do you think America would be like in the map from the my
One,
brain? Which
like
one?
like a type one. I know Silicon Valley would definitely
Yes, for sure.
innovate.
Type one. Yes, yes, absolutely. A type one and a four, right? Where it is all upper brain. It is all about innovation, creativity, lots of data, lots of perspective into new things, exploration. Let's assume the same thing, and that is the right answer, because when they did that, largely the upper brain was an average for the Americans. Let's talk about UK. Now, UK is a very different ecosystem. So I got my master's from Cambridge, and I was there, and it is a very, very interesting and unique ecosystem that UK has. Do you want to guess, Dr. Leena, UK? And I'm asking you for a reason for the
Yeah,
same.
yeah. I'm taking a second to kind of think through this. I would say type 3. Is
Yep,
that
yep.
right? Yeah.
Yep, something
Okay.
which is lower brain, which is all about people and processes. So process, which is left lower, and then right lower, which is about people. So it's more process centric, lower brain, connectivity, empathy. So it's all very interesting that you have the innovation driven country, and then you have a very process centric country. And then Canada is super easy. Canada was, I've also lived in Canada and Calgary, and absolutely, when I was reading that report, I'm like, wow, this is exactly what Canada is all about. So it's more left centric, so more of the type 1 and the 3, which is, everything is very, very, very linear, very, very streamlined, very process centric. So when we have these kind of, and I'm not going to talk about India, because you guys know what India is all going to be like. It's all over the place. So
All over the
what we call the
place.
pie, it's all over the place depending on
Yeah.
where you go into the country. But when you do average across, it's all the four quadrants, and that's the diversity piece. It's huge, right? It's wide. So that is how, we can understand the general perspective of also a career which is in a certain country or in a certain place, in a certain environment. Now I'm sure California and Bay Area is going to be very, very different from New York, very different from, let's assume Texas. So it's all going to be depending on where you are in that particular area. So that is life design blueprint. And if we go one step further now, as we talked yesterday, it's not about just understanding my brain. I'm not going to just drive my car with a front mirror on. I'm also going to look at my rear mirror, and that is about the flow and the grow. So 3 times I push my strengths, and then one time or 2 times I also take care of the weaknesses. So that is the flow and the grow piece. Once I have understood everything, well, I may not have all the people supporting me into the career which is matching or conforming to my brain type. So I need to now upskill myself. That is the upskilling piece. And my favorite is next step when you go. Look, we all learn from each other, and learning is never a sort of a solo event. I'm not going to sit and read a book and then understand the books. Interactions is what is very important. What you can give and take from the other people, because there are emotions involved, there are other subtle, intangible transactions which are involved other than just reading a book. And hence, if you look at all the top universities, they have a lot of hands-on projects. There's a lot of capstone which happens. There's a lot of on-the-go learning which happens. PBL, project-based learning, which happens. This entire reason is because we mirror each other's behavior. And that's why leadership or the success signatures, when I am exposed to a certain leader whom I look up to, automatically my brain gets mirrored into how he or she thinks. And then sort of, I try to subconsciously, even without my conscious awareness, try to imbibe those qualities. So that is what is extremely important. And we, at the Limitless Brain Lab, we also wanted to build this peak performers library. I'll come back to that, but the last part of it is, once you have understood your brain design, your life design, what kind of skills you want, what you're best at, what you can give to the world, you've already learned from these top stalwarts, you start to actually put everything in practice. And then success of both kinds, the material, what we were talking about, and the internal assets, what Dr. Leena was talking about, it's all possible. So it's a very, very logical and magical 7 steps journey into creating your life, which can make things absolutely wonderful.
Those steps make a lot of sense, and I really appreciated how beautifully you described how it's like a 7 step journey, and then you can reach to that peak.
So from what I understood, there's first you get to know yourself. That one, like what we worked on in the last episode, and also like the Mybraindesign test. And then it's a second one where it's like career like awareness, so you actually know which careers. I remember last time you mentioned a lot, and I didn't know like any of them.
Yeah, exactly. Very true.
Yeah, so
Not
that's
many people know. So it's just that's the, and why should we know? How should we know?
Yeah.
And how can we know? These are all the, because we never get exposed to, right? The brain learns when we get exposed to. So that can become a little conscious effort, but once you do that effort, there's a entire vista of opportunities which open up in your brain.
yeah. And then the third one is to see what your interests are, and then from there you see, okay, look, the open fields, and then which one you could go into. Fourth, I believe, was going into that field, and then the fifth one was
So it's the flow and the grow. You don't want to just limit yourself, but you want to build also the other side of the brain, and then you want to mirror what the top performers are doing and then become successful. I think you are very lucky because you are talking to people who are heroes in your life at this. I mean, Dr. Leena is there. You're working with people where you will automatically, without your conscious awareness, imbibe all those qualities. And that is what actually in the good old ancient Gurukul system, if we talk about India, that was the reason that you live with the guru, so you imbibe all those qualities also of that guru. So it was not just, oh, you don't want to go back home because this you just want to stay there and have a hostel life. No, it had deep meanings, and then you learn from each other because you are there all the time interacting with diverse kinds of brains.
yeah.
Mhm.
So it was upskilling, and you
Hmm.
mentioned that you work 3 times on the strength and then 1 time or 2
Yes.
on the weakness. So you don't just leave it. And then lastly, it was obviously the impact in like your material success and internal success.
Yes, absolutely. And then you mirror the people, as I
Yeah.
mentioned, that is the key component. And that's also the reason why if you look at some of the top I think you were talking to me, Seerat, about the Sal Khan,
Yeah.
the entire project which is going to be there. And why is that? Because that is where you bring in the diverse brains, you talk to different people, you start interacting with certain mentors where you
Mhm.
then sort of inculcate those habits. It's all about, I strongly feel in neuroscience, it's all about consistent operations of a habit which you, or a routine which you build. And in fact, not just habit and routine, I got exposed to something when I was interviewing these peak performers, something called the ritual. So there's a
Mm.
ritual, a habit, and a routine. So it's not just like subconscious, I'm not even aware and I'm brushing my teeth, that is my habit. But when I do it as a ritual, I'm fully present, I'm conscious, I'm aware that this is what I'm going to do. And most of the peak performers, most of the successful people, most of leaders, most of athletes, and in our library, we had some amazing people. We talked about Nicole, who stood on the Burj Khalifa, right? We also talked about the guy who had 29,000 parachute jumps, zero accidents, and then all the top leaders and CEOs of the company. And one thing which was very, very common for all of them is, of course, they understood themselves to the T. They got their work done absolutely by making the perfect team. The delegation abilities were amazing. But one ritual which they just did inside out was taking care of their brain health, which is also and mental health. So the mental wellness part of it and the brain wellness part of it was quintessential in their life.
Makes a lot of sense. It's like the hard drive of the computer, right? Like if you don't take care of that, how's your computer going to run efficiently?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that was a good analogy of the computer. Yes. So the first step was like knowing about yourself, and you mentioned that one way that your work had one of the things you created is the Mybraindesign test.
Mhm.
So how does that work, and how does it incorporate AI and neuroscience?
Mm. So
Mm.
see, AI makes a lot of redundant tasks easy, right? If I have to study all the data that comes in, thousands of profile, and then which profile goes into which bucket, and then how do I have all the dimensions? Which, because we talked about the tool as quite extensive, right? You divide into left and right brains, and then you divide into four parts of the brain, and then you get into the 8 dimensions of the brain. Now, if you put everything together and then you layer all the 8,000 careers that is there, what is available, and then how does each map to each of it, and then you go ahead and talk to people. So what we did was, as a methodology also, AI did segregate all the stuff, but then we went back to the HI saying, okay, let's have all the accountants, we speak to them, and then we give them a contentment measure, a Likert scale for their contentment, not for
Mhm.
the money that they earn, but for that joy that they get out of their life. So when
Mhm.
we were able to do that, we very quickly understood that if they were not hardcore left side brain, where it is left upper and left lower, which is about type 1 and 3, they were completely frustrated. because that is not their brain. If they were into the right side, they were doing it for the sake of money, but they were not happy. So we had to
Mm.
build all these sort of, prediction models as to what kind of, let's say, Seerat's brain is an X, then what kind of a Y challenge will be there, or Z career, and then how do you come out with flying colors out of it, etc. So all that we used AI quite significantly. And then the second half was very interesting for me personally, because when you do a physical brain scan as well. So the EEG, what we call electroencephalogram. Now, for neurodivergence, yes, obviously it is great for diagnosis. It's amazing to see if there is dyslexias and ADDs and dysgraphias, etc. But for a normal child between 13 and 18, I think we have these amazing tools. So if I'm able to also map what is the performance ability, I know my thinking, but how efficient is my thinking? What is my processing speed? Like, what is my working memory? What is my attention? What is my focus? What is my symmetry between the two sides? What is my emotional regulation, arousal? What is the relaxation score? How well I can modulate my brain firings? So that is where a lot of AI was useful. So we were able to create a database and then compare it against the database. So yes, it's very interesting. In the good old days, it would take days and years long to complete a thing, and now it's like literally at the flip of a switch that we can have all these data studied. And I don't know if I did talk about my personal life a little bit in the first episode. Sira, did I speak about issues that I had in my life? And that's the reason why my brain is on table. Okay. So very quickly, I'll just reiterate that, I had a very dear friend, 25 years of a relationship, very, very deeply emotionally connected. And one fine day, we separate out, and it was so painful for me. It was so painful that all the intellectually best things were happening in my life, all the gold medals and all the books and all the accolades and everything lovely, wonderful. No university would reject, and everything lovely, but emotionally complete, total 100% zero. And I was so down. I could not, mood regulation was difficult, emotional regulation was difficult. My parents gave up upon me, that, and there was a big board which was there: if you talk about your friend, no lunch, no dinner, no breakfast. It was literally like an ultimatum that, we are sick and tired listening to the same thing. And that is what we call rumination. So when I was going through that, I thought, let me just go ahead and map my brain and see what is going on. And very quickly, I understood that my prefrontal cortex is not well built. My limbic system, which is my emotional system, is unnecessarily overfiring. I'm not in my balanced state, etc. So that is an angle to also the performance. The moment
Mm.
you have your performance also optimized, you have your choices completely scientifically arranged, you have your thinking pattern in front of you. Now you also got the prediction ability, as we discussed in the last episode. Very quickly, from the behaviors, you predict what kind of a brain you're dealing with. You start to mirror that brain, and then things go well. In this aspect, I'm remembering of a nice anecdote. So I'm a clinician, so I sit in the hospital, right? And then I have a patient. Let's assume that the patient is a left 1 and 3 type of a brain. This patient would expect everything perfect, right? So all
Mm.
the details and perfectly driven summary, etc. And also, when I'm dealing with a patient and I very quickly understand from behaviors, I am dealing with a dominant left upper and left lower brain. I also start mirroring that. So I say, you take 500 milligrams of your medication with 200 ml of water exactly at 7 p.m. And tomorrow at 10 a.m., you're going to have nausea. And then 6 p.m., this is what is going to happen. And they like it. And then make a
Wow.
very thorough summary of it. But if I have a right sided brain which comes in, which is a right, 2 and a 4, very relaxed, chill, joking kind of a thing, I also say, take 500 milligrams. Take it whenever you like, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, it really does not matter. And they are happy because they don't want to stick to routine. That becomes a lot of stress for them. Now both the patients go out and say, doctor is very nice. Now all the doctor did was the same medication, the same prescription, the communication, the way it was presented was mirrored to what that person's brain was about. So these are some of the practical applications. If AI was not there, we won't be talking. So I love AI. I think AI is not going to take our jobs. People who will not learn AI will not have jobs. So
Exactly.
my verdict at least.
Yeah. No, it's
What do
it's
you think, Leena?
fascinating. You're using it in the day-to-day work. I think communication skills, that bedside manner, that's such a big part of being a good doctor. So you're nailing it.
Yeah, and I liked how you mentioned that you use AI in the actual test, but even like if you don't have the test, you can still like not diagnose, but you can still like identify what their brain type is. And I liked that medicine example.
Yeah, it's easy, right? Once you learn the process, once you know what types is there, once you know those behavioral qualities, it's very simple. And then it just becomes an automated process, right? So automatically, first initially it's a struggle because now you are trying to, anybody who learns this entire system goes out and then starts to predict, oh, I think he's a type 2 walking around, he's a type 4 walking around. Let me also modulate my communication that way. So it's fun. Basically, we are not trying to again pigeonhole or this to it, but facilitate that transaction, and also vice versa. What do I need to learn from that person? What do I need to give to that person? So it's all about celebration, what we talked about yesterday.
Yeah. And then how can we work on whole brain skill building?
That is, I think, Dr. Leena touched upon that we will have to learn all kinds of skill. AI and the hard skills and the analysis is one part, but the soft skills of it, right? The empathy, the compassion, the way of communication. I think the future, Seerat, is going to belong to those youngsters who will be able to grasp the whole brain and in its entirety. So we are not talking only, building an amazing AI skill or building something like a program. You can just build a Python and then you can have some form of a C level Java, blah. Yes, that's great. But if you will not be able to communicate that to people, you'll not have a human centric angle to that. You'll not have the social part of it. Then possibly the world of tomorrow will not, this kind of a thing will not work. And hence it's very important to build all four parts of the brain consciously. It is a struggle because that's not your natural, today for example, this is my natural style, but am I going to, let's say, sleep with this clothes on? No, because when I go to bed I need just my simple, cotton trousers and a pajama. Why? Because that's my comfort. So the brain loves comfort, but a little bit of effort where you put some effort to grow those skills goes a long way. So, whole brain skill or whole brain development is nothing about building all the four proportions of the brain in a way that you are at least exposed to your weakness and have some little hang of it. So, we are starting in September 1st. In fact, we are enrolling youngsters and 15 to 18. That is sort of our key interest area. We are starting something called the B Lab, which is the Brain Leverage and Acceleration Base. So we are going to start enrolling the youngsters where there are 12 different labs that we have built. So there is an inner compass lab, there is an intuition lab, there is a compassion lab, there's a confidence lab. So all these labs will cover all the four parts. So there is creativity, there's analysis, there's exceptional performance and process, and then it's about empathy and compassion. So everything will be inculcated and given it in a project based learning format where the guys will do actually go on field and then do things which is based on the capstone and then come back with
Wow,
the
sounds like a
learning.
fascinating study. It's really well thought. And I think that a whole brain is the need of the hour. I think we thought when as technology advancement happened and we were feeling like, oh, technical careers is the way to go. There was all this emphasis on IQ and in somewhere we were losing the EQ and
Yes.
the emotional quotient and the social quotient. And now we are realizing more and more that just having that is not enough. Having
Yes.
the skills and intellectual ability can take you only so far, but if you're not a team player, if you can't communicate in an effective manner, if you can't be kind and empathetic, if you can't be compassionate, if you are not able to regulate your emotions when somebody's not behaving the way you like, self-regulation, emotional regulation, those are like the key things that really take you to the next step of your success, and success not in a material way, but truly internally feeling content and feeling like you are being a human being and doing the doing you need to do to get to be part of this world.
Absolutely. And I think neuroscientifically, Dr. Leena, you know that the prefrontal cortex we don't get to build until the age of 24, right? These guys who rent out cars are very smart. They don't rent out at the age of 18. They rent out
Yeah,
at 24 because they know the neuroscience much better than the voters, voting guys.
totally.
So because the prefrontal cortex is not very well built, you obviously between the age of 15 to let's say 21, you have lots of hormones playing out. You have a kind of a crisis in life, lots of choices. It's overwhelming. So if the youngsters at that time is able to build an entire brain, able to get exposed to these micro skills, and sometimes it's even just a little bit of an insight, when you open that insight, all sort of the skills automatically get built. If that happens, then I strongly feel that the whatever the problem will come in the future, you talk of sustainability and you talk of environment and you name it, all kinds of jargons that we love to use. I think the future generation would then be very able and capable. And I think, Dr.
Absolutely.
Leena, in your practice, I don't know, but in my practice, I definitely see the young teenagers absolutely bright, brilliant when it comes to academics, but difficult to cope up with peers. Difficulty in communication and expression. All the time, the social media thing is just taking away their attention and focus. So we are losing on some amazing abilities which are not so evident outside, but then they do make a very deep impact when it comes to success.
Absolutely. And I think we are learning it the hard way now that, we are now looking at data from 10 years of social media use. We are clearly understanding how, just connecting with somebody online doesn't really enhance your social skills in a way where you're doing it in your real life interactions. And I mean, of course, there's been downsides to that. Your executive function, is being impacted. We are seeing more ADHD diagnosis because of that, being compromised. Of course, I see a lot of anxiety and depression because of that constant comparison and feeling, like you don't fit in or you are not good enough when you're seeing everybody's perfect profile and perfect kind of posts. So there's a lot there. Yeah, yeah. And I think what I have noticed is since the pandemic, it's gotten even worse. I think the pandemic, those
Yes.
2 years were very hard. A lot of kids did actually lose their social skills, abilities because of lack of that interaction, which is key for human
Mm.
growth in a more holistic way.
Absolutely. So I think social media is going to remain as one of the longest and the largest social experiments ever conducted on this planet Earth, right? I mean, 8 billion people, roughly
Yeah.
80% of them, now hooking onto it and then seeing what changes we will see as the brains will evolve. But yes, I totally agree that building, that's why, having a foundation where you are careful about getting all the sides of the brain well exposed and developed early on, because as I said, it's hardwired but it's not permanently fixed. So you keep adding micro skills into it, and then you slowly start to have all those under your sleeves. It's like, I know how to drive. I may keep a driver, which is all right, but then when required, I'm always ready to drive. At the back end, it's available, it's always ready there, out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So first you mentioned that in like now the current world, you don't need to have like a full brain, like all four parts of the brain don't have to be perfect, but you still need to be able to like use them. And also, I think Dr. Lena also mentioned that you need to be able to like work with others because I think I've noticed that like in big class projects that we have that there's conflict and then no one can talk with anyone because everyone's like mad at what someone's doing. So I think that's like a big thing that you mentioned that being able to like regulate when someone's not acting the way you want. So that's a big thing that's needed. And then you mentioned also that in the future, the qualities like empathy, compassion, and communication and teamwork are the like four main things that kids need.
Yes, what we call the soft skills and what we call the lower brain skills, right? Because lower brain is all about compassion, touching people, socialization, empathy, cooperation, kindness, giving out. So you are basically not just having that innovation and technical approach, but you're also building that lower brain. So you're kind of balancing it out.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think this will be a super interesting, yet another episode for our listeners and our audience to understand how beautifully you've kind of put together all the stuff we are trying to understand about your research and your kind of amazing work in terms of guiding the youth to a career choice that they can make, not stressing so much about it, but really understanding the different components of your diagnostic tool. And I really like, it's not just restricted to just neuroscience and intelligence and cognitive abilities, that you've made it really holistic by also definitely including and making people aware of, like, we need to also have that lower part of the brain and not just the upper brain. So thank you again,
Yes.
Dr. Shweta. I think this is all coming together. It's super enlightening for me personally. I'm sure it's going to be even more so for our audience and listeners.
I
Thank you so much, Seerat, and thank you also, Dr. Leena. I think whoever is listening, I always say that, whenever it comes to calling, whenever it comes to careers, whenever it comes to life, it is a puzzle, right? There are so many pieces into the puzzle. But if I'm able to see 70% of those puzzle pieces, I think that's good. And then the 30% sort of keeps coming on as we dynamically keep growing. And the primary fundamental this is that let's take advantage of science. We call it, and that's why, whenever we go and give our presentations, we call it, we have the science for life and then the skills for life. If you match the science for life and the skills for life, job is done.
Yeah, I echo what both of you said. Thank you so much for your time and an awesome responses. I really loved it, and I learned the importance of soft skills.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Taarika Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every Friday, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for listening.